In a mysterious land, Guan finds himself inside a magical cave, hearing the voice of his daughter Tangerine calling out for him. The glowing image of some kind of deity appears at the back of the cave, but before Guan can try to understand what it means, he wakes up. In reality, Guan is waiting patiently on top of a hill while thinking about his daughter, who disappeared 6 years ago. His obsession with finding her instead of moving on was the cause of his divorce. At that moment, a truck appears on the road, and Guan begins throwing rocks at it with blinding speed and outstanding precision, somehow making the rock curve along the way. Once the truck crashes, Guan attacks the driver, demanding to know where his daughter is, but the driver's companion knocks Guan over and runs away with his friend. When he's able to stand up again, Guan checks the back of the truck and finds it full of children, confirming these men were the traffickers he was looking for, but unfortunately Tangerine isn't there. Soon the police arrive and arrest Guan, thinking he's the kidnapper. Guan falls asleep in the back of the police car on the way back to the city and dreams of Tangerine again, this time seeing her captured by creepy tentacles. When he wakes up, he notices the cop has stolen his picture of Tangerine, causing Guan to attack the officer to recover it and escape in the struggle. As he runs away, he finds a different car waiting for him driven by Ling, who knows every detail about Guan's life including his weird dreams. Creeped out, Guan wants to get off the car, but Ling convinces him to hear her out when she informs him she can help him find Tangerine. Meanwhile, in the magical land from Guan's dreams, Kong is running away from a group of bounty hunters led by an old man. When he finds himself cornered against the edge of a cliff, Kong's sister shows up to help and pushes Kong into the water to save him while she fights off all the hunters. Instead of running away as his sister wanted, Kong climbs back up and finds his sister heavily wounded on the ground, asking him to run before the old man comes forward and kills her. The old man is hurt as well, so Kong takes his sister's spear from the man's back, and while ignoring the man's warnings that nobody can run from Lord Redmane, Kong kills him to get revenge for his sister. Kong's tired of constantly running away and decides he'll go back to the city to kill Lord Redmane, a deity that has been sending killers to attack innocent people all over the place. This plan is considered very amusing by a strange voice in Kong's head. When he turns around, he discovers the old man's black armor is alive and wants to be part of the next adventure, leaving its current host and attaching itself to Kong like a parasite that sucks into his blood vessels. Back on Earth, Ling brings Guan to the company building she works at and shows him pictures of 5 different girls that could possibly be Tangerine. It's been so long that these girls have grown up and Guan can't recognize his daughter, so Ling offers a deal. They'll use the company's DNA technology to find Tangerine if Guan accepts to complete a mission for Li Mu, the company's owner. They know everything about Guan's power that allows him to control projectiles, and they want him to use it to kill a writer named Kong. His book, whose chapters are posted regularly on the internet, has a boy named after himself fighting an evil lord called Redmane, and every time this character is wounded, Li Mu gets hurt as well. They've tried to make Kong stop writing the story, but he refused, and they can't sue because no court of law will believe the story. Guan has trouble believing it too, but he has no choice but to accept it since it's his only chance to find his daughter. Using the resources granted by the company, Guan travels on a boat to the town where Kong lives while listening to his audiobook and is shocked to discover his dreams have been showing him the story all along. When he makes it to the town, Guan immediately begins following writer Kong, waiting for the right moment to strike. Eventually Guan enters a building that turns out to be a library, and since it's empty, he can't blend in anymore. Kong approaches him to ask what's going on, since he had already noticed Guan had been following him. Fortunately, Guan thinks fast and pretends to be a fan of the book, which makes Kong very excited and causes him to ask lots of questions. Hearing about Guan's boat ride helps with his author's block and he immediately adds it to the story, making the fictional Kong travel the great seas avoiding monsters to reach Redmane City. While Kong writes, Guan gets a call from Ling, who tries to forbid him from speaking to the writer, which she knows because he's being followed too, but Guan ignores her and follows Kong out of the library. On the streets, the pair is almost hit by a car, and when the driver asks if the police are needed, Guan runs away in panic. In his hurry, he drops his hotel card key and his dream journal, and when Kong picks it up and reads it, he's shocked to be hit with inspiration. Meanwhile in the story, Kong arrives at the city in the middle of the night, where a festival is being celebrated around a giant statue of Redmane. Every citizen is there worshipping the deity, and when the statue raises an arm to point at the neighboring town, everyone grabs their weapons while chanting Redmane's name in order to fight their neighbors to death. Kong is shocked to see everyone this ready to fight for no reason, so Black Armor explains that Redmane thrives on humanity's suffering and is responsible for destroying all the cities except for 2 thanks to the manipulation of his followers. The neighboring town defends itself with a group of trained archers that manages to kill quite a number of citizens, but soon they're thrown back when Redmane's followers fight back by using dragons made from hot air balloons that create a sea of fire. Kang can only watch in disgust at all the pointless death that is only followed by pillaging and killing of the survivors once the ruthless battle is over. By the time the sun rises, a battle horn can be heard and everyone bows when a group of knights in red armor appears carrying a flag that marks them as disciples of Redmane, and causing everyone to run in fear because they're putting a curfew in place. Back to Kong, he wakes up in a hotel and finds Ling waiting for him, scolding him for his behavior yesterday and confirming she had set the car up. As punishment, Ling beats him up and keeps Kong underwater for a few seconds while Li Mu watches from a camera as a reminder to stick to the plan. At that moment, Kong arrives at the hotel as well and gives Guan his notebook back, thanking him for describing his dreams since they were a great inspiration to update the story after a long rut. Pretending he wants to go sightseeing as a tourist, Guan asks Kong to show him interesting places in the city in order to get him alone. They end up going to an abandoned field where Kong shares his story about his love for words and the fact he's been writing for 6 years, which curiously matches the time Tangerine has been gone. Suddenly, Kong begins hearing a lullaby in the distance, and for some reason this song fills him with inspiration, so he takes Guan's notebook and begins writing again. The Kong in the story finds a little girl in the streets that looks just like Tangerine trying to save a friend, but sadly the boy is already dead. Kong helps her bury her friend and learns from her that the Red Knights will kill anyone that leaves their homes after sunset. Then, this version of Tangerine begins playing the flute, choosing the same lullaby writer Kong had heard, and the song reveals their location to a Red Knight that quickly comes after them because the sun is about to set. The Red Knight begins chasing Kong and Tangerine through the city, crashing through walls and leaping onto the rooftops, making it impossible for them to leave the warrior behind. If they want to escape, they're going to need a plan, so Kong decides to change the girl for a straw man to give Tangerine a chance to get away while he distracts the Knight. When Kong is finally cornered, the Red Knight falls for the trick and grabs the decoy, giving Kong the chance to hit him on the head and break the helmet, surprisingly revealing Guan's face underneath. Furious, the Red Knight gets ready to kill Kong, but before he can land the final blow, Tangerine comes back and shouts for him to stop. The Knight turns his attention toward Tangerine, ready to kill her first, but at that moment the sun finally sets and the Knight loses control, allowing Kong and Tangerine to escape. While Kong writes all this down, Guan approaches him from behind, and as he has visions of chasing Kong and Tangerine in the story, he finally throws a projectile to knock Kong out. Then he comes closer to finish the job as he sings the lullaby he made up for Tangerine when she was a baby, as if trying to justify his actions, which also matches the lullaby that Kong heard. But before he can land the final blow, Guan hears someone singing the lullaby too, which should be impossible because it never left the family. By following the sound, Guan finds the kid that is doing the singing, but in his desperate begging and shaking he scares the poor boy away. Guan chases after him as he continues to see visions of Kong and Tangerine in the story from the point of view of the Red Knight, but the boy manages to escape, and Guan ends up in a bar instead. To his surprise, Tangerine's kidnapper is there with some friends, and the man asks everyone to help him beat up Guan as revenge for what happened in the truck. Using his throwing powers with some pool balls, Guan easily defeats them all and shakes the kidnapper until he confesses what happened to Tangerine. She had been one of his first jobs and he had only been a newbie back then, so when he used a sedative to shut her up, he used the wrong dose. Tangerine didn't wake up and the kidnapper left the sack with her body in the middle of the hills. Overwhelmed by pain and grief, Guan tries to kill the kidnapper, but Ling shows up with a bunch of guards and stops him by knocking him out. Moments later, Guan wakes up in Ling's car and hears Ling's attempts to comfort him rather poorly, which she's doing only because Li Mu asked her to since they can't lose Guan. Ling explains that the kidnapper must have been lying and that she's sure Tangerine is one of the 5 girls from the pictures. She also assures him they're taking the kidnapper to the police for proper punishment. Guan asks her not to do that and to keep the kidnapper as a reward and a life for a life kind of deal. He'll kill Kong and in return they'll give him the kidnapper so he can kill him as well. After Guan leaves to plan his next move, Li Mu arrives to scold Ling for not being convincing enough. When Ling asks, Li Mu confirms he lied about the pictures and scolds Ling again for feeling bad for tricking the guy. Meanwhile in the story, Kong and Tangerine have escaped safely and now make their way through the city while finding nothing but ruins and suffering. Tangerine tries to distract Kong by telling him the story of Redmayne and the other deity he betrayed and killed while pretending to be best friends. Eventually they make it to Tangerine's home, but unfortunately her parents have died for disobeying the curfew. While Tangerine picks up a painting her mother did some time ago, they discuss where to go next, but their chat is interrupted by a group of Redmayne followers that want to pillage the house. Tangerine refuses to give up her parents' possessions and intends to fight, so Kong comes forward to protect her, which Black Armor finds very interesting. Back on Earth, Guan calls Kong in the morning and they agree to meet on the rooftop of a building since Kong still doesn't know Guan was the one that attacked him from behind. After explaining that he finally feels a great will to live again, Kong tells Guan he's put him, his daughter, and the lullaby in the story, and that's why the Red Knight's helmet injury matches Guan's forehead wound. While Ling hears the whole conversation through a hidden microphone, Guan grabs the notebook with the latest chapter and as he reads every word, he realizes they match his visions perfectly, meaning Khan somehow has created a parallel universe through his writing. It seems his power can affect the real world as well, which explains why Li Mu wants to kill him. The latest chapter ends with the scene of Kong and Tangerine surrounded by the angry mob and Guan helps Kong brainstorm an idea of how to solve the fight, making Kong so excited that he almost falls off the roof and only survives because Guan catches him just in time. In the book, Black Armor leaves Kong's body to become a walking entity in itself and fight the attackers, killing them with ease since it can't be hurt by normal weapons. Then it turns against Tangerine, but Kong stops him just in time. Surprisingly, black armor can't hurt Kong when it tries because Kong is in control of armor's movements, and as soon as Kong realizes this, he makes black armor stab itself to put it in his place. This means Kong's blood, which armor drank, must have celestial origins, thus black armor promises to never disobey Kong again as it returns to its normal armor form. In the meantime, Guan calls Ling and tells her he quits before throwing away the phone. Guan refuses to kill Kong because he wants to protect the tangerine in the story, and for her to be safe the book needs to be finished. Unaware that Ling is following them and overhearing their conversations, Guan takes Kong to his home so he can write in peace. On the desk, Guan is surprised to find a picture of Li Mu with another man, prompting Kong to explain his father was Li Mu's business partner and that he died in a fatal accident while Li Mu was also present. Guan starts thinking Li Mu's plan has worse motivations than it seems and tells Kong to pack up in order to hide somewhere safer. Ling has also reached the conclusion Li Mu killed Kong's dad, and this whole plan turns out to be a way to cover up the story, so she calls Li Mu to demand the truth. Unfortunately, Li Mu admits nothing and threatens Ling for betraying him. Thus, when Ling returns to her car, she's knocked out by Li Mu's henchmen using electricity. Then they drive to the library, where Kong is now writing while Guan makes a plan of defense. The story keeps advancing with Kong and Tangerine arriving at Redmane's temple, where they find a huge amount of red knights sitting still. None of them move when Kong approaches them and knocks them off, and this finally makes him understand the secret behind them. They can only move during the day, and the curfew had just been an excuse to stop people from finding them in this vulnerable state. At that moment, Li Mu's henchmen arrive at the library and attack Guan on sight. A fight begins around the bookcases, where Guan uses his projectile powers to hit the attackers, yet they manage to recover quickly. The assassin using an electricity box throws water on the floor to try to electrocute Guan from a distance, forcing him to hide in a corner with no escape. When the henchman comes closer, he's ready to kill Guan, but it turns out this is part of his plan and makes the electrical attack backfire. Thanks to the isolation he had put on his hands, this sends the attacker flying across the room because he falls unconscious. Next, Guan goes after the second attacker, who has taken a special serum that gives him superhuman strength and makes him capable to dodge of all Guan's projectiles. Luckily, Ling wakes up in the car and manages to escape just in time to enter the library and stop the henchman from killing Guan by stabbing him. Her attacks aren't very effective and she's thrown away easily, but her distraction has given Guan time to make a new plan. This time, he throws a trick shot using 2 balls, so the attacker dodges the first but is knocked out by the second. While all this fighting happens, Kong gets to advance the story a great deal. Tangerine and fictional Kong enter the temple, where a huge statue starts moving to reveal Lord Redmane, who has half his face covered by a mask. After throwing around massive stones to show off his mighty power, Redmane sniffs Kong and confirms Black Armor's theory. He's the son of the deity friend he had killed many years ago, because Redmane is based on Li Mu and the story is a parallel of the murder of Kong's father. Furious at the thought of his nemesis, Redmane challenges Kong to avenge his dad and takes him outside to show him the tree where the assassination happened. Then, Redmane attacks Kong, who releases Black Armor so it can be its own persona again and they can fight together as a team. Their attacks are perfectly coordinated, but they barely do any damage to Redmane, who knocks them off easily thanks to his mighty strength and speed. When Redmane manages to grab Kong, he begins squeezing tightly, but Black Armor manages to recover and saves its master by cutting off Redmane's hand. This angers Redmane even more, and he uses his other hand to grab Black Armor and crush it into dust. Afterward, he shows off again by putting only just one giant finger on Kong to crush him slowly to death, but Redmane stops when he suddenly hears something very peculiar, a lullaby. It's Tangerine, who is playing the song on her flute because her father had taught her he'll always come if he hears her tune. Annoyed by both the girl and the song, Redmane releases his tentacles and grabs Tangerine to devour her into his stomach, matching Guan's vision from days ago. The story comes to a sudden stop when Kong gets stuck on how to continue. To make matters worse, there's a third henchman that has sneaked inside without anyone noticing and he attacks Kong, heavily wounding him. Before he can finish his job, Ling shows up and knocks him out while Guan calls for an ambulance, feeling responsible for what happened. At the hospital, Guan and Ling are waiting for news on Kong when suddenly they're visited by Li Mu, who is very pleased with these results since he doesn't think Kong will make it. He also explains he originally planned for Kong and Guan to die together and make it look like they killed each other, and the police would have the novel as proof because Kong has written Guan and his daughter on it. Thus Kong would seem to be the kidnapper and Guan a man looking for revenge. This is why Guan had to be the one to kill Kong. Then, Li Mu offers 5 million to each of them if they leave the hospital and keep their mouths shut, and when Ling threatens with going to the police, Li Mu just laughs because he has bribed contacts and she has no proof. Not to mention Ling and Kong would go down as well for being accomplices. Li Mu also wants Kong's computer, and when Guan refuses to hand it over, he tries to take it by force, causing Ling to push him away as she explains Guan will be the one to finish the book. Tangerine is still singing the lullaby inside Redmane's belly, and following the promise her father had made, the song summons a Red Knight with a Gatling gun that is ready to save his daughter. This gun actually gives the Red Knight a fighting chance since it can damage Redmane properly, and a fierce battle begins between the deity and the knight. One of the knight's attacks destroys Redmane's mask, exposing a wound with a sword stuck on it on his forehead. Kong guesses that must be his weakness, so while Redmane is busy going after the Red Knight, Kong takes the chance to jump toward the god and grab the sword to drag it down Redmane's body, ripping him in two and finally defeating him. In his agony, Redmane's stomach opens up and throws out Tangerine, who is caught by the Red Knight just in time. Back on Earth, Ling finishes reading what Guan wrote after telling Li Mu she's called the cops because it's the right thing to do. A nurse comes to tell them Kong is doing better, but Guan isn't paying attention because he's seen something at the window that is making him leave the building in a hurry. Outside, the boy that had been singing the lullaby the other day is hanging out with a young girl, and as soon as he comes closer, Guan begins singing the lullaby again to test a theory. The girl turns around to reveal she's indeed the real Tangerine, while in the story, Tangerine the character removes the Red Knight's helmet to find her father Guan, and the two of them hug tightly with tears in their eyes. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.